Live first, preparing the live stream. Make sure my stuff is muted up. Oh yeah, by the way, if you are gonna have it on, also you'll make sure that you are muted with your stream. Looks like we are starting to stream now.
Can you put the link in the chat too, just in case we want to send it out to
Yes,
folks?
absolutely. I'll do that right now. We are starting to stream. All right, right on time. Link is in the chat. Live on YouTube. Hold on. Let's see. I removed that spotlight. Hope everybody can see. Let's give folks a few minutes to jump in. Monica and Ricky, if you want to say something in the live chat, I'm gonna make you moderators. So say something in the live chat on YouTube so I can find you and make you a mod for the YouTube comments when you get a chance. We are live right now. Got 10 of our family watching. Welcome, family. Welcome. What's going on? You are joining what is going to be an amazing panel discussion with respect to Prop 16, Proposition 16, affirmative action here in California. Welcome. We'll give folks a few minutes to file in. We got an amazing panel of awesome scholars and activists and all around awesome people. Welcome, fam. We are live on YouTube. Give folks a few minutes to trickle in. Hope all is good. Happy Saturday, by the way. All smiles. Ricky, when you get a chance, comment in the YouTube chat so I can make you mod. And Monica, by the way, do the same thing. I'm gonna say a word. Hey, fam. Welcome. I'm in the chat right now. What's up, Antha? What's going on? ADOS Inland Empire in the house, fam. If you in the chat, if you can make a comment in the YouTube, shout out your ADOS city. Let us know where you from. All right, ADOS Sacramento is in the house for sure. We know ADOS Inland Empire is in the house as well. Of course, ADOS California is in the house as well. Shout out to the ADOS Bay Area family as well. Appreciate everybody. Get started in a minute or so. We here to talk about Prop 16, fam. Thank you, Ricky commented. Let me check the comments. Want to make sure we all good. What's up, Presidio? I see you in the comments. What's going on, fam? Da-da-da. Oh, all right. Why don't we get started? And we'll get the mods modded up when we see them in the comments. I don't see Ricky yet, but no worries. I don't see Monica yet, but no worries. We'll get you modded up. Welcome, fam. Happy Saturday. All right. Welcome to ADOSCA Media. You may know my face. I'm Chris Larson here in Sacramento with ADOS Sacramento and the ADOS California team. A little bit more about me later on, but hey, Monica, I see you in the chat. I'm gonna make you a moderator. Boom, there you go. ADOS Oakland in the house. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat already. ADOS Oakland, ADOS Inland Empire, ADOS Sacramento. Welcome, fam. We are here today to talk to you, the ADOS Black California community, about Prop 16. Prop 16 is why we're here today. We're here to have a community conversation with our own community about the myths and misinformation surrounding Prop 16, which is a ballot measure on the statewide ballots for approval. This November 3rd is the last day to vote. Most of us here in California have our ballots already. Yeah, if you haven't received your ballot, it should be on the way, but you might want to check out for it. Most of the ballots hit the mailboxes first week of October 5th, if I'm not mistaken. Hey, Ricky, what's going on, fam? We're gonna make you a mod as well. Want to give a big shout out to the moderators in the chat, Ricky down there in the LA area, and Monica down there in the Victorville area, I believe, right? Shout out to the Victorville family. Okay, so you won't be hearing or seeing my face and my voice for the whole conversation, fam. Lucky you, we got an amazing panel for you lined up here. We got some all-stars, some rock stars, but today we are here to talk about Prop 16, and we want to get your questions, your comments, your thoughts, and your feedback into the conversation. So if you have a question about Prop 16 that comes up along the discussion as we go forward, please feel free to use the chat in YouTube. Also, while you're here, like the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, hit all when you hit that bell. Share this video right now, share it with your friends and your family. Those of us who haven't, or those of you who haven't made a decision about your vote on Prop 16, share this video with them. Invite them into the conversation right now, because this is the time to have a conversation with our own community about Prop 16. We're going to get into some introductions for the panel in a moment, but by way of overview, we're going to begin our conversation directly with confronting some of the myths about Prop 16. There's been a lot of talk about this proposition over the last several weeks, if not several months. It's one of the most controversial, most high profile, most attention getting propositions in California in the 2020 election cycle. And so we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence. Shout out to the ADOS LA family. What's up, Marcus? What's up, fam? We wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence with respect to this proposition, because it's one of the most important propositions on our ballot this year. So we'll go right into the myths. Right after that, we're going to talk with some of our panelists about some of the most important ways in which Prop 16 has impacted them, or what would become Prop 16 if it passed, could impact them going forward, and what Prop 209, which is what Prop 16 addresses, how and what Prop 209 has had an influence on some of the lives of our panelists, both personally and professionally. So we're going to talk about real world impact. We're going to talk about the myths. We're going to get your questions and feedback all along the way. So that's what you can expect today. We're going to try to get this in within an hour or so. We'll be sharing resources as well along the discussion for you to check out. We'll have some calls to action as well coming later on. So having said that, let's get to the panel. Let's get to this amazing panel. Fam, if you want to introduce yourselves, I have a left to right order, so maybe I'll just call you and you just give us a what you can about your background, who you are, and we will get the conversation started. Why don't we start with I think Dr. K, your spotlight is on the screen already for some reason. So let's get right to you. What's up, Kay?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chris, so much. I would also like to say this is Chris's birthday. So everybody in the chat, please, he is committed to making sure that we are doing political advocacy and education on his birthday. What a glorious way for us all to be doing it. So thank you, Chris, for all of that. I'm actually based in Northern California. I am prior military, Air Force, to be specific. I really just got out in November of 2019. I am a psychologist trained in counseling and clinical psychology, and as well as a consultant who does strategic planning. I also do clinical organizational effectiveness and things of that sort. And then also I teach adjunct faculty at a community college out here, but also on some online platforms in both sociology and psychology courses. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for the birthday shout out. Appreciate it, fam. Marjorie, talk to us.
Hello, everyone. Marjorie Melvin here, and I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 20 years or more. And what brought me to the ADOS movement was going into downtown LA for work, seeing the number of homeless people, and learning that ADOS existed, and they were a group about political advocacy and roughly ensuring that we close the racial wealth gap. So I'm connected with an ADOS chapter here in the Inland Empire, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Marjorie. Let's get to it. The one and only Maureen Simmons, talk to us.
Thank you, Chris. Happy birthday again. I will echo what Kayla said. Happy birthday. Thank you for joining us and having like a really important conversation on your born day. We appreciate you. My name is Maureen Simmons. I am the co-chair of the Students for Proposition 16 campaign. I spearheaded this movement last year while I was a student at UC Berkeley. I recently graduated from UC Berkeley, and go Bears. I'm really excited to have this conversation because over the year and a half plus of working to get to this point in the campaign, I think it's a really important conversation to have because I started this campaign on Berkeley's campus with ADOS in mind because I noticed the inequities that happen to Black students in particular. So it's very important for me to have this conversation today and demystify some of the things that have led to misinformation out there. So cannot wait for this conversation.
Same here. Thank you, fam. Yeah, can't wait. And thank you for being here, Maureen. Maureen, as you said, you are one of the originators of what would ultimately become Prop 16. So it's great to have someone who was on the ground from day one here. Appreciate it, fam. Presidia, talk to us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Presidia, representing ADOS Bay Area. I'm one of the leadership members there, and I've been in education for about 11 years. I spearhead the Black Student Initiative at 826 Valencia, and I've started a couple of programs that really is trying to close the achievement gap for African American Black students. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm so thrilled to have this conversation tonight.
Shout out to the ADOS Bay Area family. By the way, ADOS Bay Area, I think, has tomorrow its monthly community meeting, virtual, featuring Tone Talks, if I'm not mistaken. So check out ADOS Bay Area on all your channels, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I know y'all just got a new Instagram page too. So shout out to ADOS Bay Area. ADOS Bay Area at gmail.com is where you need to go. Sign up for the email list. Check them out tomorrow for sure at the virtual meeting featuring Antonio Moore, Tone Talks, co-founder of the ADOS movement. All right. Last, I think, but certainly, definitely, never, ever least, Camilla, talk to us.
Oh, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Camila Moore. I'm a new committee member of ADOS LA, and I'm super excited to be a part of the movement. I went to UCLA after Prop 209 passed, so I wasn't a beneficiary of affirmative action, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I wasn't impacted by it, right? And so I'm looking forward to this conversation because as a student at UCLA, a student activist, we definitely tried to organize around bringing back affirmative action and then also protesting Albert Carnesal, who was the chancellor of UCLA at the time, who actually supported Prop 209. So again, I'm happy to be a part of the conversation and thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, fam. Appreciate it. As y'all can tell, fam, we got an amazing, talented panel. We got folks from the world of academia. We got folks from the professional world. We got activists. We got organizers on the ground. This is probably the best Prop 16 panel you're going to hear and see. By the way, this is part one of a series of conversations that we're going to be having over the next several weeks, 3 weeks at least, with respect to Prop 16 and really talking to our own Black community here in California. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, feedback, if there are things that you don't understand about Prop 16, please join us every single week from here on out, and definitely use the chat and comments today and after today as well, to let your questions be known, let your thoughts be known. What what are some of the questions that you have with respect to Prop 16? So thank you, family, for the introductions. I would be remiss though if I didn't shout out the moderators, Monica and Kim. Appreciate y'all. Monica and Kim are going to be in the YouTube chat. So when you have questions, Monica and Kim are going to be helping us keep track of those questions and make sure that those questions get answered to the best of our ability. All right, let's get right to it, fam. Myths and misinformation with respect to Prop 16. This is why we're here primarily. There's been a lot of talk about what Prop 16 does and does not do. One of the most important, most common myths with respect to Prop 16 is that Prop 16 will create a quota system for different racial groups if it passes. So long story short, if you pass Prop 16, this is what the opposition says. If you pass Prop 16, schools, businesses, jobs are going to start using a quota system to hire different racial minority groups. So they will have to hire, for example, 6% Black folks, 12% Asian folks, 20% white folks. Talk to us, panel. Talk to us about, one, why this is absolutely not true. Why is it not true that there is going to be some new quota system if Prop 16 passes?
Yeah, well, I'll chime in first. So I think what's really important for us to understand is that quota systems are illegal. And this is one of the myths that's always, posted, or it's out there, and people turn to this myth and say that because there's an inequity in the system, in order to right side that myth, we're going to have to now go to a quota system. 78 in the UC Regents versus Bakke case, that quota systems are illegal. Proposition 16 will not all of a sudden make quota systems legal. It will not. Quota systems will not happen. Proposition 16 is not asking for quota systems, nor are quota systems a necessity in order for us to have equity. What Proposition 16 will do is that it will allow for race and gender to be considered in admissions, public employment, and public contracts. And so in that consideration, what it says is that you have to consider race. Now, I also want to point out that in that consideration, what we do know from the UC Regents is that they've said because of Prop 209, they were not legally in a position to actively recruit students who were from the Black community, because by doing so, they would have been violating the law. Proposition 16 will amend the Constitution, so it will now be legal for the UC Regents to target Black students and go into Black communities specifically for Black student populations. That doesn't mean it will be a quota, but it does mean that they will be able to target their resources to underrepresented communities.
Thank you, Maureen. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I have a follow-up question, but I mean, I think it's pretty cut and dry, right? Quotas are illegal, point blank, period. So anybody telling you that Prop 16 will create quotas is not telling you the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Quotas are illegal, right? Point blank, period. Anybody else want to jump in on that, or? Nope. All right, right on. Yeah, that was a pretty simple one. I actually want to follow up, with some of the discussion that you raised, Maureen, vis-a-vis Prop 209. Okay, because Prop 209 is something that comes up in the discussion of Prop 16, right? So one of the myths. And by the way, Prop 209, Proposition 209 was a change to the California Constitution that occurred in 1996 that outlawed affirmative action here in the state of California. What Prop 16 would do would reverse Prop 209 and begin to allow us as a state to reverse some of the deleterious, damaging effects of Prop 209 since it was passed in 1996. So here's another myth. Prop 209, which was the ban on affirmative action, actually helped Black communities in California. Sometimes the no on Prop 2, the no on Proposition 16 crowd will say Prop 209 and the banning of affirmative action was actually a good thing for Black communities. Can anyone talk about what the effect of Prop 209 was on Black communities since it passed in 1996?
I can speak directly to some data in terms of students' enrollment and acceptance rates to the UC system. The numbers plummeted in terms of acceptance rates and students attending UC systems. So it did not help in that regard. And it's really important for us to understand that it will open up a really wonderful door for our students who are desiring higher quality education in terms of their educational careers. It's really important that we understand that Proposition 16, a yes vote on Proposition 16 will support more students and Black and students of color in their admissions to the UC systems, where there's an abundance of benefits and opportunity for them. So I wanted to just make that point.
Thank you for that. I was saying, come on with the data. Thank you, Basidia. Anybody else wanna add to that? Is it true? What has been the effect of banning affirmative action since Prop 16, since Prop 209 passed in 1996?
I'd like to speak to that, Chris, if I may. I just basically want to speak to my lived experience as a Black woman in California. I knew early on that I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to go to law school to practice civil rights. And I grew up in South Los Angeles, Manchester and Western, the hood. I observed a lot of just inequities and inappropriate conduct. Police officers harassing young Black men, and just a whole lot of things that I didn't like. And this was as a young child I saw this. So early on, I knew I wanted to go to law school. In 1996, I applied to law school, applied to some private law schools, public law schools, and I was waitlisted for one public law school in particular. And the admissions director told me, you can come in, we can talk to you, and we can determine if we want you. So my mother and I flew to Oakland, California, took the BART to the law school for me to present myself and to explain why I would be a good candidate at this public law school. I ultimately did not get in. And I ended up going to a private law school. With that brought on a lot of debt. And it is just the reality of going to a private law school as opposed to a public law school. I personally believe if I had the opportunity to go to a public law school, I would have been able to practice civil rights litigation, which was my passion. I posted a picture to our chat, and then I want to share this book featuring Johnny Cochran. He is one of the persons that I admire most for his advocacy for us when he lived. So just ultimately, I would like to say passage of Prop 16 begins to dismantle the structural racism that we as Black Americans in this country experience. And it allows us to get into those places such as law schools, medical schools, UC schools, Cal State schools, to begin to put ourselves in positions to dismantle racism and racist systems. And that's a picture of myself and Johnny Cochran when I was a little chubbier.
Thank you for that, Marjorie. Yeah, right now on the screen, fam, you have the late great Johnny Cochran and one of our panelists here, Marjorie. This is again, this is a stacked panel. So you are looking right now at the late great Johnny Cochran, and as we're talking about Prop 16 and its effect on individuals like Marjorie. Excuse me, Prop 209's effect on individuals like Marjorie, who are seeking to follow in the footsteps of people like the late great Johnny Cochran. We can definitely bring that back up later on for sure. If we want to talk more about that, but that's a great picture, Marjorie. You look great, fam. Okay, so anybody else want to talk specifically about Prop 209 and its effects on them? What has been the real world effect of Prop 209 as opposed to what some of the misinformation around Prop 209 has been?
Can I make a related point? I guess I also went to law school, and I went to a private law school because I didn't get into some of the public law schools in California. And ironically, that some of the private law schools that I did get accepted to were actually higher ranked than the public law schools that I did not get into in California. And as Marjorie said, what comes with private law schools, even if they're top ranked or elite or Ivy League, they come with high amounts of debt. And I come from a low income family. And so a lot of the times, people who go to like ADOS, people who go to these elite institutions or private schools, they take on loads of debt. And then they have to look into maybe places like in the private sector to pay off the debt. And instead of kind of following their passions, like kind of like what Marjorie said, going into civil rights law or human rights law. So it can be a real catch-22. And so I think that's why one reason why affirmative action would be great for ADOS people and people of color.
Thank you for that. Good.
Can I add to that? So I'm originally from Mississippi. I went to school on the East Coast and in the Midwest. And so I wasn't familiar. I mean, California was kind of like a very unique location for me when I first got here back in 2015. But I can tell you that what happens in California is also happening in other locations and other places. And so we don't want to I went to an Ivy League in New York, and I mean, I'm still dealing with the repercussions of that debt and having to make really intentional decisions about what I'm going to take, if I'm even going to be considered for the contracts, who's in those rooms, who are actually sitting on those panels, who are sitting and advocating, who are sitting at the table, all of those things, whether that's at the corporate level, whether that's at the educational level, even whether that's in the church community, sometimes can have these same implications. And so there are a lot of assumptions, a lot of myths. So I'm really hoping this conversation will continue to kind of move that forward. So, and also, even if you're not interested in school, we want to think more even about generational implications, because these decisions were made in 1990s. But the reality is many of us entered maybe after 1996 into some of these professional realms. And so you don't know what your offspring or what your family members or what your community members may want to do. And we want to be able to set precedent moving forward. Just in general. And I think that this will set the stage for other laws and other litigation to occur. So.
Yeah, and I think I love what you said, Dr. K, and I want to amplify one point that you made, is that we should really think more largely about what happens outside of California as well. In 1996, when Proposition 209 was passed in California, the UC Regent president at the time was Ward Connolly. Mr. Connolly actually not only was a champion of Proposition 209 in California, but he also traveled to other states to have similar legislation passed in those states as well. And that set a trend, not only in California, but in other states for an affirmative action ban. Currently, California is only one of 9 states that remain that do not have affirmative action plans as part of their their larger goals in their state. So we want to look and say that typically what happens is that where California goes, there goes the rest of the country. And we see that happened even in 1996 with the affirmative action ban. So we should think largely about the impact that we will have, because whether or not we specifically want to attend college, we are setting a stage whereby those that will come after us will have an entry and a pathway should they choose to. And then I also want to touch on kind of what was happening in my own personal experience at UC Berkeley that led to spearheading this movement. And it goes to a lot of what Marjorie said, as well as what Camila touched on, and echoes what Dr. K said. And that is that as I sat in UC Berkeley, which is, one of the most prestigious undergraduate institutions, but I was there in 2018 where less than 2% of the population were Black students. That Black student to Black faculty ratio was missing, right? As well as the Black student retention rate. Because of Prop 209, the institutions were not allowed to provide resources that would have made our retention rates higher. So therefore, students, Black students in particular, who fare very poorly in the UC system, according to this published data that the UC Race and Equity Center, I think that's what they're called, published, it made our, not only our admissions process difficult, but also retention and recruitment. And I also want to make one last point. When people talk about quota systems, I always play devil's advocate and I say that Ivy Leagues, which we will not have a quota system, by the way, but I want to have people to really think about that Ivy Leagues have a system of, pathways for legacy people, right? And although we don't consider that a quota system, we do look at that there's access there. And so what Prop 16 is doing is it's saying that we need to create a pipeline for access, because most recently here in California, they uncovered that there were 64 students that were admitted to the UC system on a favor system, basically friends of family contacting the UCs, and none of those students were Black students. So that meant that Black students were left out of even the running to have access because of favors being made by, by admissions people and friends of family. And so we want to be able to have a justice claim moving forward. By passing Prop 16, we can begin to look at the inequities and have a claim that says, we see that this is a trend. Currently, we can't do that. So those are things to think about.
And someone in the chat, I see they mentioned what other public sectors will Prop 16 affect outside of academia. And then they also asked, could someone talk about the options, opportunities for the passage of Prop 16 and what that opens up in contracting? And I'll tell you this, after working for the government, and even in those academic spaces and working as a consultant, I need kind of big contracts. And so if that has to do with campaigning, et cetera, this will open that conversation. And I know Maureen has actually talked a lot about these pieces. And so I want to give other panelists an opportunity to comment as well.
Let me unmute myself. I actually would like to chime in on the contracting piece, because a large part of my own work organizing prior to and now even through my ADOS movement organizing has been around organizing with and for and on behalf of Black-owned businesses here in Sacramento City, and then also in the county of Sacramento. Years ago, I helped found what is now the largest online hub and directory for Sacramento Black-owned businesses in the county of Sacramento. It's called Sac Black Biz. We've been supporting and serving Sacramento's Black-owned businesses for several years now. And I can tell you, with a straight face, there are not enough contracts going to Black-owned businesses in my city, in my county, most likely in your city and your county. And it's so hard to get contracts specifically for Black-owned businesses because of what was then Prop 209. And if folks vote no on Prop 16, what will continue, which is why we are a strong advocate here for a yes vote on Prop 16. It's hard for us to even see how much of the contracts go to Black-owned businesses, right? We know from our own research, if you open up any almost every Sacramento City Council agenda, you will find money going out for contracting for landscaping and catering and construction and all kinds of services that your city needs done. And almost none of those contracts, almost none of that business, almost none of that work goes to Black-owned businesses here in this city, here in this county, and I suspect where you are also. So there has been, and since 1996, we've seen a drop in the number of contracts that went specifically to Black-owned businesses. There are usually minority set-asides, people of color set-asides, but we can't specifically target Black-owned businesses. So Prop 209, which Prop 16, if you vote yes, would undo. Prop 209 has had a very harmful effect on Black-owned businesses, on Black contracting, specifically for Black-owned businesses here in the city of Sacramento. But as we've seen in some of the other data, also statewide. Does anyone else want to talk about contracting or how some of the opportunities would expand and not contract if Prop 16 were to pass?
I believe that this gives opportunities for people in power, supervisors, directors of government agencies and city officials to really take individual agency on, I see a lack of diversity in this area, and that will really allow them to consider, you know what, we need diversity, we need people of color, we need Black people to really represent the city. If they're living here, right, if they are doing business here, why not have them represent the contracts that we put out for individuals to benefit from, or to even build the city up? Those construction jobs, like Chris said, catering, there's so many opportunities within these cities in government that we can take advantage of. But I know that it has a lot to do with, the directors of these agencies to really take real individual agency to understand that we should be considered. It's the consideration of diversity. And I think that consideration is more than enough.
Gotta keep unmute myself. Thank you for that, Presidia. Want to move on to one, maybe two more myths, and then let's talk about let's dive more into some of the real world impact that we have experienced since Prop 209 passed in 1996, and what we expect to see on the other side of Prop 16. So one of the other very common talking points from the no on Prop 16 crowd is that Prop 16 creates discrimination, that it's a reverse discrimination measure, that this will allow discrimination against different groups in California, that it will harm other groups in California. Is this true? What's up with this? Anybody can jump in.
I think when we begin to have these conversations, I always liken this to, kind of all lives matter. But I would like to say that all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. And I'm not talking about Black Lives, the organization. I'm talking about Black lives and actually ADOS mattering, right? We hear Black Lives Matter and people automatically want to think that that's the organization that really doesn't stand for Black lives, even in their organization. No, I'm talking about ADOS lives mattering. And so when we begin to put our focus on the most marginalized, those that are at the bottom, when we amplify and uplift and ensure equity for that group of people, just by the nature of how things go, because we've seen it play out, other other groups benefit when you begin to amplify and uphold and uplift the Black community. But what happens when you don't do that is that the Black community is left out and everyone else begins to benefit. And so we have to really turn our focus and ensure that there is equity in the Black community. We have to be very intentional about that. We can't be afraid to say that we need to uphold the standards that will make ADOS a beneficiary of the sort of admissions and public contracts. We have to demand that. We can no longer sit and accept that we will be fairly treated. We have to say we demand that we have ADOS representation in these spaces. And when we do that, just by the nature of how things go, everyone else will balance out. I mean, that's, I don't have a reason for how that is, but that's just the way that it goes. And so we need to have equity for ADOS, and we need to demand that that happens at every level.
May I speak, please, on this particular issue? And I'm speaking from my lived experience again in the legal arena. When I was in law school, I worked for the largest plaintiffs litigation in the state of California. The firm is called Girardi and Keese. It is a major player in terms of litigating on behalf of people. And when I was at Girardi and Keese, I also decided that I wanted to work for a federal judge just to have that experience. So I submitted my resume to Judge William J. Ray, who is now deceased, and his chambers called me for an interview. I went into chambers, met with the judge, and initially during our conversation, he was not interested in having me as one of his externs. Then I mentioned that I was also a law clerk at Girardi and Keese, and things changed. He said, "You know Thomas Girardi? Oh, absolutely. I want you to work for me." So I began an externship for Judge Ray. Working for Judge Ray was an amazing experience because I learned what judges look for in deciding motions, motions to dismiss, motions for summary judgment, but more importantly, he gave me a project. He gave me the project of reviewing and making determinations on habeas corpus petitions. Habeas corpus petitions, if you don't know, are petitions where people are pleading, people who are incarcerated are pleading to the court to release the body. There is some reason, Your Honor, that I need to be released, and I am asking you to consider these reasons. He placed me over that project, and I am grateful for that because I was able to do some justice in the federal court system. And I only got that opportunity because of my connection to the establishment. So passage of Prop 16 gets us in the door. It opens opportunity where we would otherwise not have it because of the old boys network and the system that allows for opportunities really for those who are connected.
Marjorie, thank you for that. That's actually a really good, just a quick follow-up on that. That's a really good point you made. We don't often talk about the connection between Prop 16, Prop 209, and the criminal justice, criminal injustice system. This is it's probably the first time that I've heard somebody make that connection. It's really, really important. And we've talked largely about college admissions, public contracting, and employment, which are very, very important for sure. But we've rarely talked about what it means to have the right people in the right places inside of the justice system, and how Prop 16 and Prop 209 impact and affect that. As we most of us here, everybody here is a supporter and follower of the ADOS movement, founded by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. We know for a fact that one of the things that Yvette Carnell says often is that policy is often personnel, right? Policy is personnel, right? It matters who is there, right? In many, many cases. And so thank you for making that connection. Presidia, you wanna jump in?
Yeah. I just want to kind of make a logical argument for why Prop 16 will not be reverse discrimination.
Yeah.
We have to understand that diversity is not discrimination. Diversity is wonderful. We need diversity. So why would it be discrimination to allow people who have been oppressed, people who have been discriminated against for so many centuries, to use Prop 16 against them and say it's the first discrimination? The people who have been oppressed and really not considered for so long would actually benefit from Prop 16. So it is not reverse discrimination. It is a ways, an ends to a means to so many things that Black people need, so many things that people of color need. So we need to understand that don't listen to the lie. It is not reverse discrimination. It is actually going to promote diversity. And I want to just tie this back into students. When students see people that look like them, teaching them, they are more likely to thrive in their education. So with that diversity that we need, through Prop 16, we will now have more Black students, more, Latino students, more Native American students that will actually thrive in their education if we continue to vote and push the yes vote for Prop 16.
Thank you for that, fam. Great segue, actually, to maybe we'll talk about this myth as our last myth, right? So there are 3 or 4 that we've already talked about. All right, but let's talk about one of the biggest myths around Prop 16, and it actually comes from one of the comments too. So I'm glad that we're getting questions, and comments, and feedback in the chat. Fam, use the comment section, use the chat section. Let us know what your thoughts are. Also, I'll pause here to say, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to ADOS Media. This is the place and one of the best places online right now to get hardcore ADOS media straight with no chaser. So please subscribe to the channel, like it, follow it, share it, all that. Let's get to one of the most important myths and discussions around Prop 16, right? And that is that because Prop 16 is not specific to Black people, it's not going to benefit Black people. That is one of the myths, conversations around Prop 16, that because the language is not specific to Black people, it's not specific to ADOS people, that Black people, ADOS people will not benefit from Prop 16. Anybody want to take a stab at this first?
I guess I'll take a stab at it. So that was actually one of my concerns. I'll be very transparent about that, right? This is for everyone. And if you know the history of affirmative action, and if you have not, I recommend you read When Affirmative Action Was White. Also following Breaking Brown on YouTube, because Yvette Cornell has done a lot of teachings regarding what affirmative action really was. And really, you could just do a simple Google search and it'll be able to kind of show you. So affirmative action was initially put in place for Black identified students, right? And at this particular point, we didn't have a lot of immigrants in the US, and that wave kind of happened more later in terms of 1980s, et cetera. But something to consider particularly about this is you cannot have a conversation about policy change without there actually being a policy on the books for it to happen. So the reality is, there are no specific policies just for Black folks, period, anywhere. You won't find it anywhere on the books. And so this is really kind of a stepping stone, a stepping point for us to begin to carve out. Yes, it is very unfortunate that we're having to have this conversation in 2020. It is very unfortunate that we have to fight, we have to beg to be included in these conversations, to be included in consideration, right? And one of the other myths that we've kind of touched on is just even whether or not the people that we're advocating have to have an opportunity to get those contracts or to get admitted based on affirmative action, et cetera, that they're less qualified. That in itself is actually a microaggression, and it's a stereotype. So it is unfair to believe that just because of someone's race, like what you're really saying is that, I got in on my own merit instead of having to utilize this. And that's actually something that a lot of folks who may be non-white and those who are white have said. The reality is you're implying naturally that the person that did get in because affirmative action is on the books wasn't qualified. And so people really need to begin to take a pause to really evaluate where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do. I hope a lot of the people in the chat, it looks like we have a lot of ADOS CA folks here, and we just got AB 3121 kind of passed in terms of reparations, et cetera. So Prop 16 passing will actually set the stage and the platform for us to be able to do further litigation, further policy improvements to carve out specific things for Black communities, right? And we're not just talking about, I'm not going to get into the logistics of like types of Black and all this other kind of stuff, but what we're trying to say is this group is constantly overlooked. And we are constantly kind of the stepping stone, the foot, the dirt for everyone else and for lots of systems of oppression in society. Everyone wants to think that this is reverse discrimination or it's reverse racism. That's not a real thing, because in order for racism to exist, you have to have the power to impose and oppress systems. And the reality is Black folks don't have that. So that myth is demystified completely and automatically, right? So you actually have to go back to the root and understand what these definitions are. And so I just want people to think, just because we don't have, because this is not specifically for Black Americans, because this is not specifically for ADOS, sometimes you have to play chess instead of playing checkers. And so the reality is you may have to do a lot of moving pieces, right? There's a saying, I think it was by Stephen and Chris actually said this in one of our meetings yesterday, but how do you eat a whole elephant? You take one piece at a time, right? And so that's really what we're doing. This is one platform. This is one methodology. This is one way, right? And that's for instance, for me to be considered, I worked for the CEO of this corporate military organization, right? What I was able to do was actually bring in a Black catering company that otherwise never would have been able to get that contract, never would have been, because, people are vying, but this is based on friends and families, and you're getting the friend and family hookup. Well, I was able to say, no, let's think about these other things and be able to impress and impose those things within the system. And so it's one way. It's not the only way. It's not going to be an end all be all. It's not going to answer all the questions, but it does push us in the right direction. And I think if we think about policy in that way, is that there's no single policy that's going to be specific for one group, but there may be a multitude, and it sets the stage for other things. So hopefully that helps. Sorry for such a long answer, but I wanted to be really clear and then also tie in the other myths as we begin to just answer questions in the chat.
I just want to say, teach, Dr. K, teach.
Thank you for that, Dr. K. Anybody else wanna jump in, right? Why is it not true that because this is not specific to Black folks, it's not going to end up helping Black folks? Why is that not true? That's one of the myths that we hear. Thank you, Dr. K. Anybody else have any follow up on that?
Yeah, I actually do want to follow up, and I'm also chime into some comments that are being posted in the chat around Prop 16's performance in the polls, and in particular to whether or not Prop 16 is actually doing well in the polls. And I want to just kind of say that it's incumbent upon us to recognize how important this is.
Yep. Maureen, we'll come right back to you when you are ready. Let me actually follow up real quick while Maureen gets ready. To the question of, again, why is it not true that because this is not specific to Black folks that that Prop 16 is not going to help Black folks? So one, I think I said this yesterday in some of our meetings. I am glad that Black folks are asking this question. I'm so happy that Black folks are starting to think in this way. It's music to my ears to hear Black folks asking for specific policy. Okay, it's taking a long time to get here. All right, so one, pat yourselves on the back. We want to validate where that's coming from. So keep that energy, please. Okay, keep that energy. Keep asking that question. This is a special case, though, and I say it's a special case because the question almost answers itself if you understand what Prop 209 and Prop 16 do. Prop 209 says you can't have anything specifically for Black people. Prop 16 says you could have something specifically for Black people. So right now, it is illegal for you to have anything specifically for Black people in the state of California based on the existing law. What Prop 16 would do would take that down, and then it's going to be incumbent upon us to fight for the specific policies and specific benefits that we will get, right? But before you can even have that conversation, you have to open the door for that conversation to even happen. And that's what Prop 16 does. It opens the door. It takes down the roadblock. It takes down the barrier. It makes, I've been saying this a lot, it makes a Black agenda legal again. Okay. Right now, your Black agenda, your specific Black policy agenda is technically illegal.
Absolutely. Chris, may I chime in?
Sure.
Okay, just to piggyback on what you all have been saying, it allows us to continue the fight. If Prop 16 is not passed, and as Chris stated, race cannot be considered in public contracting, in education. Passage of Prop 16 opens the door and allows us as advocates, as activists, to continue fighting. We've got AB 3121 on the line. We are looking to possibly at some point pass a reparations bill for Black Americans. We are looking at defining Black Americans, or what it means to be Black American. These are all part of the struggle, and we add that to the passage of Prop 16 to get our government, to get the state of California to continue to address the issues that we as Black Americans have historically experienced. This is a picture of my parents. Mom from Louisiana, dad from Texas, both born without a whole lot. In fact, both now in their 70s, having to pick cotton when they were young, both experiencing Jim Crow. I'm a product of this. I have not had the opportunities, let's say, of a person whose parents had the money to put them in, let's say, the classes, to the Kaplan classes, the Princeton classes, to get into law school, to get a better score, to be admitted to law school. I didn't grow up around the language of the law. So this was all new to me. Had I not been given the opportunity to even go to the private law school that I went to, I would not have been able to make the changes I've made in state parole. I was one of the parole board members. I am responsible. I'm telling you, I am responsible for Black folk, for all people coming before the California Board of Parole to get a fair hearing. I personally am responsible for a lot of folks having a fair hearing and getting the opportunity to be released from state prison. And that is me as a Black woman in a room that normally I would not have had the opportunity to be in. So long story short, it gives us the opportunity to fight another day and to continue the struggle.
That was extremely powerful, Marjorie. I just want to reiterate how impactful and important that is. And I think the takeaway message really is there's so much more work to do, but we can't even do that work without beginning to put some of those puzzle pieces together, right? I'm from Mississippi. I come from a low income family. I mean, many of them, they don't even trust banks for online banking. You know what I'm saying? And so little Black girl from Mississippi working in most spaces, trying not to be the only one, but not even knowing that there were different types of Black at some point until I moved to New York. And so, and having been in Mississippi, even recently, some of those same structures are still there. So you think about trying to pass, like think about what affirmative action looks like in California. And as Maureen has said so many times, as is in California, as is everywhere else. Well, think about what this process would look like, even trying to pass it in a Mississippi or in a, you know, or in a completely kind of red or a very conservative state, et cetera. So this is just the beginning of the process of the journey. This is people trying to, even with our debt, Marjorie, we are trying to set the stage, set the platform, being able to have those conversations. And really, one of the other takeaways I want to encourage people to do is this is about political education. Don't take our word for it, right? Do not take our word for any of this. In most people in California, you've already received your ballot in the mail, which was a mandate. Read it. You know what I'm saying? Look at this. There's a whole thing on Prop 16 in here. There, like, we have to begin to educate ourselves, to move and shift. A lot of people I know they want to be apolitical, but the person is political. And so you don't get to exist in an isolated bubble because it impacts the janitor as much as it impacts the CEO, as much as it impacts those that are falling in between. And so just make sure this conversation particularly is about Prop 16, what the implications are, what it means, what the myths are. We're going to have some additional ones about this, but really I want people to begin to think about who they are, what legacy they want to leave, and really outside of what legacy you want to leave, what does your community need? And think outside of even your immediate community, but what are the long-term implications and how can you, increasing your own political education, help in terms of advocacy? Everybody doesn't have to do a panel. Everybody doesn't have to be in the spotlight, but your vote could really change something. You being in a room could really change something. And so we're not just thinking about material resources, we're thinking about social capital. That means like your communities and who you're connected to and who calls you and who knows you, because it's not just about who you know, it's about who knows you. And you won't be known without a Prop 16. So yes, is really what we want to do. We're all committed to that. On this particular board, I think we each have our own individual experiences, whether that's in contracting, whether that's in education, whether that's in academia, whether that's in law, criminal justice. I've served on the Commission for Criminal Justice in Solano County for a very long time. And some of these conversations aren't even happening on those committees. So these are public platforms that these conversations are not happening. And so Prop 16, and just to give you all even a really tangible one, right now it would be illegal for them to for UC Berkeley to be able to set up a particular kind of resource and fund to go into low income or even, you know, any specifically Black American communities and do recruitment. That would be illegal because that would be discrimination. So what this actually says is, no, you can set aside money and specifically target going in and recruiting. You can travel around and try to expose other people to these UC Berkeley. You can have a high school program that's committed to trying to help folks that are interested in going. And it can be specifically for these groups, but without a yes on Prop 16, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't take place. And so it's not the only thing, as I said before, but it is part of the puzzle, and we're asking all of you all to support and then share this with everybody else, and then come back to the other forums that we're going to have with new questions and keep challenging us and keep that energy.
Oh yeah, fam. Marjorie, I see your hand up. Actually, I want to go back to Maureen, because Maureen, you got cut off for a second, but you're back. You were just getting ready to spit some fire. So please pick up where you left off, and then we'll go to Marjorie, and then we do have some questions and comments in the chat that our ADOS and Black California family are asking. So Maureen, please take it away.
I was gonna spit fire. It got caught all in my throat and choked me. But I do want to comment on this idea from the Black community, and specifically our ADOS community, I do want to appeal and say that I completely understand and empathize with how we feel. As a Black student on UC Berkeley's campus, as I said, I started this movement with us in mind. And I understood the barriers, I understood the hurdles that I would have to cross in order to do that. But I'm asking you to trust that your sister, me, and the other Black students who have you in mind are fighting so that we will have a fighting chance. Without the passage of Proposition 16, we will not have a fighting chance. We will not have a fighting chance to make a claim that says that we need to be included in admissions, public contracts, and public employment. And I want us to keep in mind that what Marjorie pointed out about the legal system, I put some statistics in the chat that says that we make up about 5% of the total population of California, yet we comprise of 26% of the prison population. That also has to do with underrepresentation of counsel. And when we are not allowed and afforded access into our higher education institutions, then we're not going to have a representation in our courtrooms because we are not in there to begin with. And so when we look at this, let's think about this really more broadly. And when we're thinking about public employment, we want to think about these are, you know, everything from working in government all the way down to locally working in a post office or working in the police station. We know that policing in our community, we're saying defund the police, but we also want to be able to make specific claims about our experiences and be able to say that we want some community-based policing and make that a really strategic argument because we would be in concert with the law. So I'm asking you not only for you to consider this, learn all that you can, but also check in with your friends, family, and allies, because if we only make up 5% of the population, that means that we need the support of other voters. Currently in California, I believe the Hispanic voters block makes up almost 40%. They're at 38% of Californians are Hispanic, identify as Hispanic. That's the largest voter block. And so we need to have these hard conversations with friends, with families, with neighbors, and implore them that we need to have this legislation passed. So don't give up in the fight because of what the polls are saying. Don't give up because we are here and it doesn't look like what you want it to look like. I'm committed to this. I'm committed to not just the passage, but committed to making sure that ADOS has a seat at the table, whether this passes or not. That is my commitment to you.
Marjorie, jump on in, fam.
Thank you, Chris and Maureen. I'd like to read this comment that was posted in the chat, and it's from the HR Maven, and it says, fact, Blacks in California comprise 5% of the population, but 26% of the prison population. Black lawyers could help change those statistics. And that is absolutely 100% on point, right on it. We have to be in the room. Black attorneys need to be able to take on cases that have a positive effect on us. If we are able to go to public law schools, we don't carry the debt that you would typically carry in a private school. When I think it was in 2003, opened up my own little shingle at a company, at a huge building near where I live. And my mom gave me $1,000 to pay the rent for my business as a lawyer. And I did well for about a year. And ultimately, I had to make the decision to close the practice because there was just a lot to deal with. You have the rent, you have to bring in clients, and you have the debt that law school, the debt because of law school. Had I not had that debt, I'm telling you now that myself and a lot of my colleagues with whom I went to law school would be practicing civil rights litigation. I worked with some of the best and baddest Black American attorneys here in California. But because of the lack of, just quite honestly, capital, we have a more difficult time taking on those cases. Yvette Carnell typically brings up a point when she speaks, and I'm paraphrasing, she says something along the lines, laws are only as real as your ability to enforce them. When you're taking on plaintiff's cases, you as an attorney typically have to front all of the costs, and litigation is extremely expensive. More Black attorneys able to take on civil rights litigation enables all of us as Black Americans to thrive. Right now, we just don't have that opportunity because of the debt that we typically have in having gone to law school. So my point is, we need to be in the space, and passing Prop 16 allows us entry into these spaces, law, medicine, other areas. Back to you all.
Thank you for that, fam. Fire, more fire. This is, we have some questions in the chat that I think we want to get to. There's a couple of questions. Maureen, you started to answer some of the questions around the polling, right? With respect to Prop 16, we don't have very fresh polling, from what I understand, around Prop 16. The most recent polling is probably sometime back in mid to early September. So we really don't know, the most recent information with respect to how Prop 16 is doing in the polls. Ultimately, obviously, the only polls that matter are the polls on election day, right? So, we'll be paying close attention to that. But there's a couple of questions in the chat. One around whether or not we all think, or some of us think, that if Prop 16 doesn't pass, that will be backlash against what just did pass, which was AB 3121, which is the California Task Force to Study and Develop Reparations Proposals for African Americans. If Prop 16 doesn't pass, does that count as backlash against the fight for reparations here in California? Great question. Thoughts?
I think that our opponents are not to be underestimated. I think that they know exactly how this is all connected. And some people are really just out to not see specific groups thrive. Black people thrive, ADOS thrive. And I believe that if Proposition 16 does not pass, that is not a reason to give up. It is not a reason to throw in the towel. It's just saying, let's go back to the drawing table and let's work this thing out. But I know for a fact that the work that we are doing now in support of Prop 16 means a lot. No one can tell the future, but we can work our butts off. We can work hard in order to get it done, to spread the message, to continue our political education so that our community is really informed in making really informed decisions on what they're voting on. So I know that I'm not going to underestimate the opponents or people who are trying to block Proposition 16. That's just going to give me fuel to the a little bit more fuel to the fire. So I'm not even thinking about that. I'm just like, how we gonna do it even stronger? But I'm down for Prop 16 in 2020.
Facts. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts on that? With respect to Prop 16's relationship to AB 3121.
Well, having authored AB 3121, I do want to chime in. I don't want to take up a lot of time because there are other comments, but I do want to chime in and say that at the ADOS community, we do have to be particularly diligent in ensuring that we have equity. We have to, as Presidia was saying, we have to be very strategic to understand that there are those in society, in California in particular, who want to ensure their place And if that means that we are held back, then their idea is self-preservation. ADOS has to begin to understand self-preservation. Self-preservation means that we are passing the legislation that position us in the place to be able to take advantage of the policies. That means Proposition 16, that means AB 3121 and that task force, and any other pieces of legislation that would position us to be able to build wealth, to be able to really take a chunk out of the 26% of population that we are imprisoned. I mean, we have work to do on so many scales and so many levels, but the passage of Prop 16 is vitally important to that. And I do want to say to someone who asked about the polls, in the chat, I put the polling data from about 4 days ago that was published. As we've been on the chat, I've been trying to look at some data and saw that those are the latest polling numbers. And particularly what it is that as you all have a lot of questions, many people are still questioning what will happen with Prop 16 and what does it mean? And that's the purpose for us having these series of chats. So continue to ask the questions, but if you're at all undecided, or if you know someone else that's undecided, invite them to this chat, as well as send them the link to the chat, and then connect with us on social media platforms so that we can answer your questions and help you to make that decision.
Very, very important points to make, Maureen. Thank you. Just to reiterate, this is a series of conversations. This is part one in a series of conversations that we're going to be having with the Black California community. So if there are people in your area and your family in your orbit that are undecided, not sure, have questions about what Prop 16 really means, invite them to our community conversations. Share this video with them for sure. Connect with us on social media, California ADOS for Prop 16, also ADOS CA Media as well on all your social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. This is an important type of engagement that we want to do with our own community. And we're here to answer every and any single question that you have around Prop 16. Also, just to continue the answer to the question, some of the funded opposition to what is now Prop 16 is also a part of the opposition to what became AB 3121. So there is some overlap with respect to the organized groups that were against Prop 16 and were against AB 3121. So we can expect that opposition will continue. But before we do, I want to throw it to you and in the panel and also to folks in the chat. If there are any outstanding questions, final questions that folks have, please drop them in the chat right now. Also for the panel, does anyone want to talk any more about any specific impact personally, professionally? We've had some of this conversation already, but does anyone want to add to anything that they've said, or talk about some of the particular programs that they are looking forward to with respect to Prop 16 personally and professionally in their own lives?
I know Marjorie spoke on the increase of Black people studying medicine and law. Just thinking about how disproportionate infant mortality rates are for Black women and also for their offspring. Just understanding that diversity is so important, and it's so important to our lives and our well-being when we're going into these hospitals, when we're interacting with people who don't look like us because they don't understand us, they don't know us. And to know us is to love us, and our people love us, right? ADOS loves ADOS. And so it's important for us to vote yes on Proposition 16 so that we have more of us in these places. We're living, we're thriving, and we survive. So I just wanted to add that.
Appreciate it, fam. Anybody else? We got a couple final questions I think coming from the chat too. One about what kind of advertising is going on with respect to Prop 616. So have we put out ads, right? How's the promo going around Prop 616, and then also what alliance groups are supporting Prop 16? This is another commenting question that is coming from the chat.
So I think that I've wrestled with the answer to how our messaging has been, and in particular to our ADOS community. I want to say, first of all, a huge thank you to Chris for making this platform available, for facilitating this conversation today, but also for embracing me when I reached out to ADOS and said, I need your help. I don't see ADOS being represented the way in which that I would want them to be represented. Will you please help me to begin to spread the message that this bill is for ADOS? As a Black woman who started this campaign, I have felt the erasure in my own campaign. And so I am asking you to join with me, because I know firsthand in a campaign that I started that you wouldn't know that I started it by the erasure, but that makes me fight like hell for us, because I recognize that if you will try to erase me from a campaign that I started, what will you do if we don't pass this bill? It is time that we are not taking and being silent. We will not allow you to erase us. We will not allow you to pretend that we don't exist. So I want to say this to my ADOS family. I want you to fight like hell with us to the ends of this poll. Do everything that you can to ensure that this passes. And I will tell you this, that should Proposition 16 pass, that it will be because of ADOS. Because if we look at the polls and we look at the numbers, it wasn't until ADOS stepped in the fight that we began to have the success that we've had in the polls. So I am coming to you as your sister. I'm appealing to you to do everything that you can to push back against the narrative. I have fought and been erased. But I'm asking you to stand against that erasure, push back. We need to get this passed. We need to ensure that AB 3121 has a task force that has us at heart, and we will refuse to be on the bottom rung for the rest of our existence. It is time out. So I'm asking you with everything in me to combat the misinformation, to make sure that you get yourself to the poll, and make sure that, and the poll be in your living room or wherever it is, to fight like hell for this, fight like everything you have depends on it. Because I'm telling you, I don't care what anybody tells you. I'm telling you, I started this fight, and I started this fight for you. So regardless of if you don't see yourself in it, I started it for you, and I want you to finish it with me. And I promise you, I will fight like hell for you every step of the way.
Say no more. Say no more. I actually want to end there. To be honest with you, let's end it right there, fam. If there's anything to say after that, it's Maureen. We appreciate you. We love you. We here for you. We see you. We validate you. You are a special force. You are a special woman in this fight. You are a special person on this planet. You are right on time. You were destined, ordained to be here at this time, just like the rest of us. And we are honored to be in this fight with you and to be fighting alongside you. And I don't want to say nothing else, fam. Oh, maybe one last thing. Sorry. Come back for the next one. Okay. If you thought this was fire, if you thought we was just warming up, come back for the next one. This is a series of community conversations that we're going to have around Prop 16 and why it's so important. Bring your family, your friends, share this, like, comment, subscribe to ADOS Media. Family, any last words from our panel?
That was powerful. The benediction needs to be given. That is all she wrote. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Maureen. That's it for me.
I don't think there's much else to be able to say. I mean, I want to say thank you for the transparency, Maureen. And I think it's so important to recognize like the parallel between her process and her experience and how it manifests in every aspect of society. The erasure of Black Americans, of Black people, and us being the stepping stool for everyone else's success, and just being erased from policy, erased from conversation. So thank you so much for having an interest. She didn't have to do this. She didn't have to make the decision to start this fight. She didn't have to, I mean, people don't understand. And I think anyone can really have their own experiences, but people don't understand what you sacrifice emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, when you're in these spaces, trying to navigate them, particularly navigating spaces that are not intended for you, that don't respect who you are, that don't care or value what you think. And this work is important. This is needed. It sets a platform. It's therapeutic for a lot of us. And so just thank you for sharing that. And I saw in the chat that someone was like, can you explain a little bit more regarding that? Come back to the next one. Don't just share this with people in California, share it with other folks. And I also just lastly want to make sure you don't have to know everything. No question is stupid. All questions really do matter. We want to be pushed. We want you all to be thinking critically. We want the questions to be out there, whether it's connected to Prop 16 or not. But we are really pushing for political advocacy, political education. You not just watching this and not reading. Like, we want you to read. If you're having literacy issues, that's something that Prop 16 would ultimately be able to assist with and be able to help. And so trust us. We all are committed to this process. We are volunteering. There is no payment. We are not paid by any organizations really to be here. This is us, right? And we're just so thankful to Maureen. Thank you so much again, Chris, for the opportunity to participate with such amazing panelists and some really great questions in the chat. I'm looking forward to the next one.
All facts. Family, stay tuned to ADOS Media, California ADOS for Prop 16 for information on where you can catch, when and where you can catch the next installment of this 3-part series, community conversations around yes for Prop 16. Great job, panel, Presidia, Camila, Dr. K, Maureen, Marjorie. Great work, fam. You know, I could say no more other than I'll see y'all next time, and I'll see you very, very soon.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Maureen. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Love